There is a moment in every human interaction when power silently shifts. It is rarely loud. It is rarely dramatic. It usually happens in the space between two breaths. Someone accuses you, questions your character, twists your words, challenges your reality. And before your mind fully registers what is happening, your mouth opens. You begin justifying, clarifying, explaining, laying out the evidence of your innocence, as if your survival depends on it. And in that precise moment, the power that once belonged to you slips directly into the other person's hands. Human psychology is not designed for modern confrontation. Long before cities and offices existed, long before meetings, relationships, and reputations, the human brain learned one rule: if an authority figure shows displeasure, survival may be at risk. That instinct never went away. It simply evolved into something more subtle. The part of you that rushes to defend is the child who is still trying to prove to someone that you deserve safety. When you rush forward with explanations, the world does not hear accuracy. It does not hear truth. It hears anxiety. It hears the tremor of insecurity that says, "Your judgment matters more than my reality." Machiavelli understood this instinct long before neuroscience existed. He wrote that it is better to be respected than understood. Respect establishes distance. Understanding invites interrogation. And every time you defend yourself, you step into the interrogator's room voluntarily. Imagine a meeting. A colleague makes a subtle accusation, something that undermines you just enough to put eyes on you. You immediately respond, "That is not accurate. Here is what really happened." At face value, you corrected false information. But on a psychological level, you just accepted their frame. You agreed that they possess the right to question you. And no matter how correct your explanation is, you appear smaller for giving it. Human beings do not evaluate social dominance through truth. They evaluate it through composure. A person who defends emotionally signals that the other person's words matter. A person who remains still, unaffected, unfazed, signals that the other person's words are merely noise. But this habit of immediate defense runs deep. It begins in childhood. When you were accused of misbehavior, your only path to avoid punishment was explanation. You needed permission to be innocent. You needed approval to feel safe. And that childhood survival pattern calcified into adulthood. Now, every boss, partner, critic, or stranger becomes the authority figure whose judgment you fear. And your instinct tells you that the only path back to safety is to explain. But adulthood demands a different kind of power. Power that does not seek permission. Power that does not justify itself. Power rooted in sovereignty. Consider the most dangerous shift, the moment you stop treating people as judges. When someone throws an accusation, you do not treat it as a verdict. You treat it as a passing breeze, something that does not require a counter-argument because it does not hold authority over your identity. And when you stop responding as a defendant, you rewrite the social script completely. Picture the next confrontation. Someone says, "You are being incredibly selfish right now." The old response rises in your throat. You want to explain, to prove you are not selfish. Yet the moment you provide reasoning, you validate their right to evaluate your character. Instead, imagine yourself pausing. You breathe. You look at them with absolute stillness. No tension in your face. No anger. No expression of hurt. Only the silent presence of someone who feels zero urgency to correct anyone else's narrative. Silence fills the room, and something extraordinary happens. The tension does not build in you, it builds in them. Silence becomes a vacuum, and their mind tries to fill it. They begin talking again. They begin adjusting their accusation. They begin scrambling for footing. The very thing they tried to impose on you drags them off balance. Machiavelli believed that unreadability is a greater source of power than aggression. When you defend, you reveal insecurities. When you remain silent, you reveal nothing. And the less someone can read you, the more they must respect the unknown force you represent. Here is a question worth reflecting on. When was the last time you defended yourself, not because it was needed, but because you feared the emotions of the other person? Think carefully, because this is where most of your power leaks. Sometimes silence alone is not the tool. Sometimes the attack is ridiculous, exaggerated, or manipulative. In these cases, a more refined Machiavellian strategy emerges, the weaponized version of agree and amplify. When someone makes an absurd accusation and you defend yourself, you validate the premise. But when you lean into the exaggeration with calm amusement, you strip the accusation of its emotional power. Imagine someone saying, "You are obsessed with money. You are greedy." Instead of defending your character, you reply, "You may be right. I will probably start charging people for breathing in my direction next week." Delivered with a neutral, amused tone, the accusation collapses. You become the sculptor of the reality, not the target. This is amused mastery. The psychological state in which the other person's attack feels no different from a child throwing pebbles at a mountain. No force, no threat, simply drama from a source that does not have the power to disturb your center. But to wield amused mastery, you must first let go of the part of yourself that fears being misunderstood. When you no longer need people to agree with you, their accusations stop feeling like danger. They become data, noise, weather, and when you stop validating the emotional storms of others, something else rises within you, a presence, a gravity, a quiet, cold power that people instinctively feel. You become the person whose reactions cannot be predicted. And unpredictability is intimidating. There is a deeper layer beneath all of this, a layer that determines whether any of these strategies will work for you. It is the inner architecture of self-knowledge. Most people defend themselves because there is a wound beneath the accusation. If someone tells you that you have green skin, you do not get angry. You do not defend yourself. You do not feel threatened. You know with absolute certainty that the accusation is nonsense. But when someone calls you irresponsible or selfish or insecure, and you find yourself rushing to prove them wrong, it is because a quiet part of you fears they may be right. They touch the bruise inside you, and your instinctive reaction is to protect the bruise from exposure. This is why Machiavellian power is not external first, it is internal. You must know your darkness. You must own your flaws. A person who accepts their shadow cannot be rattled by it. If someone calls you selfish, you might answer, "Sometimes I am." If someone calls you difficult, you may shrug and say, "I can be." The attack passes through you like smoke. It has nothing to latch onto. The moment you own your own flaws, the world loses the ability to weaponize them. This is what creates true psychological invulnerability, not arrogance, not coldness, integration. You no longer build your identity on the shaky ground of public perception. You build it on internal truth. This internal stability allows you to perform one of the most powerful power-flipping maneuvers, shifting the frame of judgment. Every argument has two roles, the judge and the defendant. The judge asks the questions. The defendant provides explanations. When you defend yourself, you accept the role of the defendant. But if you answer a question with a question that examines the other person's behavior, you invert the power structure completely. Imagine someone demanding, "Why are you always late?" The defensive response rises instantly, but instead you reply, "Why does my arrival time affect you so intensely?" Suddenly, the spotlight is on them, not you. Their emotional reaction, not your behavior, becomes the subject of analysis. Another example, you are being ridiculous. Instead of defending your reasonableness, you calmly respond, "What makes you feel the need to use that word right now?" You draw attention not to your actions, but to their patterns. They wanted you insecure. Instead, they feel exposed. These questions are psychological mirrors. They show the other person their own motives, fears, and strategies reflected back at them. Manipulators hate these mirrors. They rely on your emotional reactivity to maintain control. When you refuse to play, their script collapses. But there is another tactic, even more powerful. It is called fogging. Someone tries to provoke a fight, expecting resistance. Instead, you agree with the factual portion of the statement and completely ignore the insult embedded in it. You messed up this report. You are incompetent. You answer with calm self-possession. You are right. The report does need corrections. I will fix it. You do not deny. You do not argue. You do not defend your ego. You simply take ownership of the action. The insult loses its weight. The emotional energy they attempted to inject into the moment evaporates. The entire attack collapses under its own emptiness. Fogging requires strength. It requires the ability to withstand your ego's instinct to protect itself. But the result is devastating to the attacker's strategy. They wanted a confrontation. Instead, they are left with a deflated sense of victory that never arrives. All of these strategies require one thing: emotional discipline. These techniques fail if you apply them while your voice trembles or your breath shakes. Power is not a sentence. Power is a presence. And presence comes from internal certainty. That certainty is built by removing your emotional dependence on others. You cannot be manipulated if you do not require approval. You cannot be insulted if you do not hide from your own imperfections. You cannot be psychologically cornered if you do not fear being misunderstood. This leads to the 7-day challenge. For 7 days, you commit to a simple rule: no explanations, no defending, no clarifying your intentions. If you spill coffee, you say, "I spilled it." If you arrive late, you say, "I am late." If someone misunderstands your meaning, you let the misunderstanding sit. You allow the discomfort to wash through your nervous system until it no longer controls you. By the end of the 7 days, you will notice something strange. People begin treating you differently. They hesitate before accusing you. They grow more careful with their tone. They become more respectful without realizing why, because they feel your sovereignty. They feel the absence of need in you. And human beings instinctively respect those who do not seek approval. This transformation does not make you cold. It makes you whole. It turns you from someone who reacts into someone who chooses. Someone who moves through life with internal authority rather than external fear. Before we end, I want to ask you one more question. Do you believe you can become someone who no longer needs to be understood in order to feel at peace? Your answer will reveal where your power journey truly begins. If this philosophy resonates with you, If this kind of psychological strength speaks to something deep within you, then make sure you subscribe and like this video. Your presence here tells me you are ready to become someone the world cannot easily shake.